everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about bees. Honeybees, the honeybees that we have here in our observation hive, as well as just bees in general and bees around the world, who they are, how they benefit us and the planet, and then what we can do to help them. Okay, so basically, let's start off with what life might be like for a honeybee. And so imagine a very dark space where you're surrounded by thousands of your brothers and sisters, and despite the absolute darkness, you know everything that's going on around you because you're using your senses, your smell, your taste, touch, and through vibrations. Yeah. So there's constant activity, and actually somebody was just saying this tonight as we were looking at the observation hive. It just looks like chaos in there, but then when you actually start looking at them and seeing what's happening, everyone knows exactly what they're doing, what their job is, and they're doing it, and it just makes sense. As a bee, you know your place in the scheme of things. You carry out your task for the survival of the hive and for the survival of your sisters, your brothers, and your mother, who you absolutely adore.
I do that.
You do that? Yes. That's great. So this is the life of a honeybee. It's the life inside a hive. It's the life of the colony. So next. Okay, so there you go. Okay. Woohoo. Okay, so the most obvious association we have with bees is probably being stung, right? You know, it's like the first thing, you know, when I say, oh, I'm a beekeeper to folks, they say, oh, I'm so afraid of bees, I got stung once, you know, and it's just like that's the association that, kind of in general. And I'm going to almost guarantee you that pretty much every time somebody is stung, it's by a yellow jacket, okay? Yellow jackets are scavengers. They're also carnivores. And they're the ones that are coming around looking for something. You know, you're at a picnic, you know, you've got a plate of something, and they're the ones that are coming around to look at what they can scavenge. And they can be pretty aggressive, and those are generally the ones that are stinging. Honeybees will do everything they can to not sting you, because once they sting you, they die. Okay? So their main goal is to go from the hive to the flowers, or to the trees, or to their water source, and back. That's all they want to do. So the likelihood of a honeybee stinging you is pretty rare. It does happen. Let's see. So this little girl, she's not getting stung. She's actually wearing a bee beard. That's what they call it. And how that happens is she probably has a caged queen attached or taped to her chin, and the honeybees just want to be around the queen, so they're going to just swarm wherever she is, especially if it's outside of the hive and there's like not any work for them to do. What they want to do is protect her and just be with her and keep her warm, so she's not in any danger of getting stung, you know, unless she starts swatting at them and putting them in danger. So besides the whole stinging thing, my goal is to open your thinking to also include the beauty of these beings and the absolute necessity of them to our survival, because they are pretty necessary. Let's see. So honeybees and humans had a long relationship. So the first recorded documentation of bees that we've found is in 13,000 BC in the caves, in one of the caves in Spain. And I don't know if you can see right here, it's not very clear here, but this is the image that's painted on the cave wall, and it's of a figure climbing down vines to get combed honey from a cave wall. And then in ancient Egypt, 2500 BC, they had, hieroglyphs and where they honor the bees. They actually revered the bees and thought honey to be a divine product. They used honey medicinally, they used it for religious ceremonies, and a big part of their agricultural success was in part due to beekeeping. Then we do a quick timeline. 1622, bees were introduced to the Americas by Europeans. Honeybees are not native to the Americas, and they brought them over for honey and for wax. And in fact, I think they pretty much used wax. Wax was very important to people because for their lighting. It was pretty rare that people could afford to get whale oil or other sorts of oil for lighting. So I think the bees ended up being pretty important for that. In 1851, Langstroth, he designed the modern bee hive, the boxes that stack. Those were actually designed by him. Before that, the comb was not removable from the hive. This made it possible, or he made it possible, to have frames fit into regular size, equal size boxes so they could stack, and then you could have a really large colony that you could manage. He also figured out bee space, and so these are actually this is all a particular size. Bees need, 3/8 of an inch of a space so that two bees can pass each other, okay? If they have more than that, they're gonna build their comb, or do it this way. If they have more than that 3/8 of an inch space, they're going to build their comb out further, which would make it tough for lots of different reasons for brood, because you don't want to have a particularly long cell for the brood. And then if it was too short, if it was too small a space, then they would feel crowded, and then they wouldn't make their cells long enough for brood. So it was just a really important development at that time. And it's funny because if we have, in stacking our boxes, sometimes I put a spacer in between for some reason, and once you have more than the 3/8 inch space between boxes, they actually start building comb along the tops of these. So they really like that space. So he was very important. So in 1945, the war increased the wax demand, so that resulted in a spike in beekeeping. But then in 1982, there was a sharp decline in bee numbers due to parasitic mites. That's when we started seeing the Varroa Mite. You may have heard of them, and being a cause for the decline of bees. So they started exploding, and so now today there is an increase in backyard beekeeping, but the threat of chemicals used in farming is also, is starting to decrease the numbers. And you guys probably have all heard about that, you know, all the hardships that the bees are undergoing. And so we'll talk about that later in terms of what's happening in relation to that. So, let's go to our next one. So we depend on bees for so many of our foods. So, you know, all our fruits are, majority of our fruits and vegetables, coffee, cocoa, vanilla, cotton, carrots, figs, I mean, just like 1/3 of the food that we eat, really, we depend on bees for. So we've co-evolved for thousands of years. They are in decline, and you may have heard of colony collapse. And what happens there is that bees are actually disappearing. They're leaving the hive and not coming back. And researchers still, like around the globe, still don't know what the cause is, but they're definitely seeing numbers going down, and economically it's taking a toll because the cost of over 130 foods that we rely on is going up in price. So bees have an important role in our economy as well as agriculture. So bees. Okay, so I started talking at the beginning about bees versus yellow jackets. There are a lot of different bees that you, around the country. You may see, you know, on a good day in a garden, you may see, you know, 5, 6, 7 different varieties. The really small ones with the shiny bodies. They're just absolutely beautiful. But so those are bees, but they, yeah. So anyway, the honeybee is this one. The bumblebee, you guys may all be familiar with the bumblebee. Then there's the hornets, the yellow jackets, and the wasps, and they're not bees. They live in colonies and they're social, but they're much more aggressive, and they're, I believe, carnivorous as opposed to the honeybees or to bees in general. All right, so it all starts with a single egg laid in a cell in a hive by a queen, and she can choose. Okay, here's the queen. She can choose to. She can choose whether to fertilize an egg or not. If she fertilizes it, it becomes a female. If it's not fertilized, it's a male. And if it's a female, it'll be a worker bee, and the males are drones.
What are drones?
What are drones? So the drones are the boy bees. Yeah.
Are they the ones that protect and guard?
Actually, good question. They don't. The worker bees, the girls, are the ones that protect and guard in the honeybee world.
Which ones are the ones that get the honey?
The worker bees.
They do both?
Yep, they do both. They do all of the work in the hive. The worker bees, let's see, I have a whole list here. So the worker bees, which are the girls, will start off as nurse bees and take care of everybody in the hive. Let's see. Well, let me talk about that in just a minute. So let's first of all look at the different bodies. So you've got the worker bee. She's small, she's light, she's nimble. She can get into all of the nooks and crannies of the hive because she's got to do all of the jobs in the hive. The drone has very large eyes, and that's so that he can have very excellent vision so that he can find a queen up, out in the sky to mate with. Okay, so he also has a very big thorax. Like a thorax? Yes, yes.
It's bigger.
Yeah, much bigger, and that's so that he can power those wings for really long flights in search of a queen, or I should say a virgin queen. And the queen, so that body is just a lot bigger. The queen's body has a very long abdomen, and that's so that she can house the organs, her reproductive organs that allow her to lay her body weight in eggs per day, which can be up to 2,000. So she can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day in the hive. So yeah, so she's got to have all the paraphernalia that she needs in there. So you'll often see her just kind of dragging. I mean, it almost looks like she's dragging her abdomen behind her. Why?
Yeah.
Oh, because she has a lot of eggs in her abdomen.
Is that bunny?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So so she mates only once, or she only one time in her life. So once the queen is born or emerges from her cell, what she does is she goes off after a few days, and she's gotten her wings all ready to go. She goes off for several days and to this mating spot in the sky where drones will find her, and that's where she will mate with up to 40 or so males. And because she needs all of the sperm that she's going to use for her entire life, which could be up to 5 years. And so if she's laying up to 2,000 eggs a day, and that wouldn't be every day, and it wouldn't be during the winter, but for 5 years, I mean, that's an awful lot of sperm that she needs to collect because she never leaves the hive again unless they do a swarm. But then that's just to go to another hive, and then she's in there, for the rest of her time. So,
So she can choose when to fertilize and when not to fertilize?
Yes.
That's impressive.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And how she chooses that is the hive strong enough now with all the workers that she needs to do all the jobs, then now she can now have some drones in there, because they're more expendable than the females and the workers. And let's see. Okay. All right, so this is the queen. Actually, let me take those with me so I don't have to keep coming back and forth. So this is the queen in here, and this is actually, it's a little fuzzy, it's my photo, but it's our queen that's in that observation hive, and she started off with a red dot on her thorax, but it got chipped off, so she has just that little bit left, and I don't even know if she has that much left anymore, but she's got that longer body, and it's not striped like the workers, and she's all of the workers are facing her, they're attending her, taking care of her, and she's moving along, she's checking out different cells to see if they're up to par, if they're clean enough and ready for her to then take her abdomen and stick it down into the cell and lay an egg. So what happens is she makes her nuptial flight, and then oh wait a minute, did I get stuck here? Hold on. Oh, I did, I ran ahead. Okay, so an important part was that the fertilized egg, as you were asking, can become either a worker, so one of the girls, or it can become another queen. The worker bees only live up to about 6 weeks max during the summer because they work so hard, they pretty much work themselves to death. the queen can live up to 5 years, and they both start from the same egg. So an egg that looks like this. All right. So the difference is, so for a female, for a regular worker bee, the bees are only going to feed this egg royal jelly for the first 4 days. If something happens within the hive and let me see, and they need to replace the queen dies or gets injured or compromised in some way, or the hive becomes too crowded and they end up doing a swarm, then the workers will choose some of these eggs, and they'll and some of these fertilized eggs, and bathe them in royal jelly, which is a product that the very young bees create, and they will continue to feed royal jelly for the entire time until the cell becomes capped, and they'll also create a cell for the queen that is much longer and protrudes down, and it will look almost like a peanut shell. So here's a worker bee cell capped. Here are drone cells capped. They kind of bump up a little bit because they're bigger, they need a little more space. And here's the queen cell. Let's see. All right, so what happens is, let me tell you a little bit about what happens with the queen. There can only be one queen in the hive to reign at any given time. So the queen, or the virgin queen, once she emerges, so she's coming out, and then a lot of times they'll put the queen will put the cap back on, and I can't remember why. Do you remember, Michael? Okay. All right. But if she's the first one out, what she will do is she will hunt down all of the other queens. And what happens is the workers will not just make one queen cell or take care of or start. They won't only do one queen, they will start up several queens, actually even up to 15 of them. But when the first, just in case something goes wrong with the first one, or with one of them, so that they ensure that they'll get at least one good queen. So the first one comes out, and this looks like actually she's come out of this one. She will go around and sting through the cell all the other queens. And because sometimes, well, often the hive is very large, and it's a lot of space, and to go through all those frames is pretty, it's a lot of work. So what they'll do, and I've actually heard this a couple of times, the queen, the first virgin queen will come out, and she'll start piping these little pip, 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 and the queens that have not yet emerged just automatically respond to that and will pip back. And so she will just, zone in on them, kill them, and keep going.
So she doesn't die? She doesn't have a barb stinger? So she can
No.
sting and not die?
She doesn't die, no. She's the only one in the hive that doesn't have a barbed stinger. Yeah, so she can definitely sting multiple times. Yeah. So she'll go and destroy the rest of the queens and then start her reign. Let's see. Oh, this is cool. All right. So once she comes out and emerges, she will, like I said, take a few days, get her wings all into shape, and then get ready for her nuptial flight. Drones in the cell, drones just from all of the other beehives in the area oops, back over here. Okay. All right. Drones from the moment of their birth are utterly dependent on the workers. So the workers feed him, clean him, take care of all his needs. He just hangs around the hive doing only two things, basically, eating and thinking about finding a queen to mate with. He actually might think differently if he knew the reality of it, because what happens is, for the drone to find a queen and to mate is actually committing sexual suicide. And what happens, so it's pretty fuzzy, but you've got the drone with the queen here, he's actually found a queen, and then here's the queen after the drone's kind of fallen off, and she's actually got part of him still inside her. So he pretty much just falls to earth and then just dies after that. But he passes on the genes, she returns to the colony, and she's got all the sperm stored for her entire life to repopulate the colony. So here's where we talk about all the tasks. You were asking about all the different jobs that happen in the hive. So much like us, you know, in our society, they've got different jobs. So nurse bees, from the day they emerge till they're 11 days old, they clean the cells, they warm the brood nest, they feed the young larvae, they feed the queen, they feed the drones. Then when they're 12 days old, or so 12 days to 17 days old, their bodies actually start creating wax, little platelets of wax. And so they take the wax from their abdomen, chew it up, make it very malleable, and then they add it to wherever they're building their comb. Also during that time, they can be honey processors. So that what happens is, as foragers come in with honey, the foragers will give them the nectar. They take it and then mix it with enzymes in their honey stomach, and then they'll go to cells and deposit the honey in the cells, or the nectar in the cells. And then what happens is the guards and air conditioners, from 18 to 21 days, so like 3 or 4 days in a bee's life, they'll be a guard, standing on guard at the entrance of the hive. So that's when they're guards. And they also do some ventilation. Oh my goodness, actually, if you look back there, you can see there are a bunch of bees in the tube. And if you were able to see them, you could see that they were actually flapping their wings, and fanning their wings so quickly. They're drawing moist air out of the hive, so that the moisture level of the nectar goes down and starts becoming more honey-like. You know, honey is pretty thick and has very little moisture, or not little, but has only 17% moisture, as opposed to, you know, a lot when it comes in. So that might be an interesting thing to see, John.
So bees have 2 stomachs?
The bees have 2 stomachs. Yeah, they have a crop. So actually, let's go back to the beginning. Where is that? Oh, there it is. Okay. Oh, is that possible to look at that? Okay.
Oh, you want me to call in and do it?
Oh, what do you think? Are they, Michael, do you wanna see if they're fanned?
They were just walking.
Hmm?
They were
Or
just walking.
Yeah.
They're just traveling.
Oh, okay. Okay, 'cause
No fan.
okay, the other day when I was here, they were all lined up in the fan. Yeah, okay, so anyway, so yeah, they've got two stomachs. This crop is the first, is the honey stomach. And then, oh, let's see, I think this is their midgut. But that's where they store the honey, and then they send it back out through their proboscis, and give it to the collector bee. Okay, so, let's see. Yeah, so these are the wax cells. So, okay, and then the last job that they have from 22 days on is to go from flower to flower, tree to tree, to water, to collect everything that they need for their colony. So nectar is their primary carbohydrate, pollen is their protein. They need water just like we do, and all animals, and propolis. Propolis is a sticky substance that they collect from trees, so a sap, and they use that propolis to cover, to seal any openings between boxes. If anything, if you start getting any openings in the wood, any checks or cracks, they'll use propolis to seal those. It's waterproof, it's antimicrobial, it's antibacterial, so it really helps keep the hive clean, and a pretty important substance for them. And if you come up later, you can see that there's a lot of it. It also helps, it's so sticky and hardens up so that it keeps keeps things from moving around. So you can see from this well-used box, you can see some of the propolis. And so benefit from the flowers, but then the flowers and the plants also benefit from the bees. The bees are providing a very important pollination service. And that's one of the reasons why there's so many colors in the flowers, and that's to be able to attract bees to work for them. All right, so honey. So one of the first things that people think about with honeybees is like, honey, where do you get the honey? How does that all happen? And so, this is, a typical frame of honey, that we'll find here. And then in other parts of the world, there may be caves or whatever. I imagine that's honey that's probably collected from, or a honeycomb that's collected from a cave. I have a feeling that might be in Nepal, but I'm not positive. Where was I going with this? Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is if you want to, if you're looking at using honey for its benefits, make sure that you get raw honey. You guys probably already know this, but raw honey, has a lot of medicinal properties as well as just it can be used for a lot of different things. I found this on Pinterest and I just couldn't resist because there's just like so many ways you can use honey. You know, they're using it for shampoos and conditioners and for dandruff and to anti-aging and razor bump remedy and scar fading and moisturizers and just so many different things. It's pretty amazing. And then also medicinally, you know, for eczema, for blood sugar regulation, for digestion, burns, wounds, diaper cream, hangovers, nope, hiccups. But anyway, so it's pretty amazing. And so, where do you get this honey? So, these are, well, this is our hive right here. Sometime in the late summer. And then these are hives that I have at home. These are the typical Langstroth boxes. And then bees, you know, doing some inspecting, just making sure that they're doing well. And then this year, we've actually started keeping a different type of hive, these top bar hives. And, you know, whereas the Langstroth hives have, this kind of frame, the top bar hive has these guys. So, I'm not, the only structure that I'm providing is this top bar, and they get to build their comb in the way that they want to, in the size that they want to. So, you know, if they want to have more if it's time for them to have more drones in the hive, they're going to actually build bigger cells. And if they have enough brood comb in their hive, then they're going to start building bigger comb to accommodate the honey, because they can use bigger cells for honey storage. Yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to say about that.
Do you have a preference? Have you found that you like one over the other?
Good question. I'm moving to the top bar pretty much out of necessity because it's hard to lift these boxes when they've got honey in them, which is like super heavy. They could weigh up to 50 pounds, 40, 50 pounds. And if it's, you know, if it's a tall hive like this one, and this top one is honey, because usually they have their brood down below and then their honey up above. So to lift that box for me, and I'm on the short side, it's just really, really got difficult. So everything is on the same level with the top bars. You know, so in terms of just taking out the frames to inspect or whatever and then putting them back, it's just much easier.
How often do you inspect them? Weekly?
In the spring, yes. Yeah, weekly, because they build up very quickly and will swarm very quickly. So if you don't.
So what do you mean build up?
Good question. So if a hive, or when a hive winters over, so it has survived the winter, and now we come into spring, then and the flowers are blooming, nectar's flowing, pollen's there. Their population builds up very quickly. The queen starts laying sometime in February, even though they're in a small cluster. So as it gets warmer and warmer, there's more bees and more bees, and then as it really gets into spring, it's like a population explosion. Yeah. And once the hive gets overcrowded, or once it's starting on that trajectory, they start getting ready for swarming. And so, you know, you could go in there one week and everything's fine, and the next week you go in and there's queen cells all over the place, which means they're in swarm mode. And unless you do something like right away, you know, like split the hive, take the queen with a bunch of bees, and brood, and put them over on this side of the yard, and then, so then you're leaving these guys with no queen, so they can't leave. She can't leave because I didn't leave her with enough, you know, with too
Do
much.
they go and find her, or they try to?
The
You guys would split?
foragers, you know, who actually, if she moves away, they won't, because they're so habituated to coming back to the same hive.
Someplace,
So that's one of the things that in terms of beekeeping, okay, you know, which method am I gonna use right now, you know, in this particular situation, am I gonna leave the queen here with all the foragers and take these guys away to make their own queen over here? Yeah, so there are a lot of variables that come into play in terms of when and how. But, yeah, so actually this is pretty interesting. In the heat, we had such a hot summer this summer. You can see these guys are like really bearding. There's a bunch of bees just right outside. They just come right outside of the hive and just are out there fanning, because it was just too hot in the hive box. Yeah, so that's local. I just wanted to show a little bit, about what happens in different parts of the world. So in France, and actually I can't remember exactly where this is, I think this is in France as well. They're using logs, stumps, and hollowing them out so the bees can create their own comb in there. And then this is in Central Africa, pygmies. They're called honey hunters, and actually just, yeah, fearless. You know, going up there to collect the comb. Again in France, using a straw hive called a skep. And then in Argentina and Brazil, boatmen, beekeepers, so they go up different tributaries and set their beehives and then do their maintaining just all the time.
Yeah, I saw one of the pictures online is people driving to farms, tractor trailers, and they just roll up the sides of the trailers and all the bees, like literally 18 wheelers of bees.
Yes, yeah.
Into fruit trees and everything, can't survive without these tractor trailers of bees.
Exactly, yes. Yes, this is, yeah, the bees made that, and we made that from wax from their own bodies, so they produced the wax, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, that brings up one of the issues of, that we're gonna just talk about next. So we really do rely on the bees for a lot, you know. I mean, our picnic would be pretty sad without the bees. There'd be like no watermelon, there'd be no, you know, besides bananas and pineapple, there'd be no other fruit in our fruit salad, no guacamole, no salsa. You know, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, no peanut butter or jelly, so you just have the bread. So, yeah, so it's not a picnic without the bees. So what is hurting the bees? What is killing the bees? So monoculture, you know, those areas of the country, you know, the fruit trees or the almond groves, bees can't survive in areas like that because, you know, there's a lot of food for a short amount of time and then there's nothing, it's just a desert. You know, they can't survive, so that's why they have to truck in those millions and millions of bees for that time, and then close up the truck and move it on to the next crop. Then there's our Varroa mites, parasites and pathogens. Bees do get sick just like we do. They have an immune system just like us. Some illnesses and parasites have become resistant to intervention. There have been huge declines because of the Varroa mite. They are like a vampiric tick, so pretty much like a tick is with us, you know, they just get on us or get on the bee and just start sucking their blood, or what they have that is blood, to their blood. It weakens them, it acts as a vector for transmitting illnesses, all kinds of viruses, and it can really hit the whole colony, you know, one whole colony pretty quickly. So there are some bees that, and some genetics, some races of bees that are better at handling the Varroa mite. But even the best, even those that are really good at it, if they're hit with the next issue, which is pesticides and fungicides, those just weaken their system just way too much, and so they can't. It's just too much for them. So, you know, researchers still trying to figure out, you know, how to, you know, what the problem is, but we really have to start thinking about how to lessen the strain on them, you know, in terms of the whole pesticide thing. So let's talk about pesticides for a minute. You've probably heard about the neonicotinoids that are in the pesticides, and there's all this controversy, you know, should we keep using it, or should it be banned? They've banned it in Europe, I believe. Yeah. So basically what happens is it's water soluble. When it's applied, it goes into the soil. From there, the seeds soak up the neonics and and it just becomes part of the plant. It's in the plant. So when the bees, you know, arrives at the blossom, collects honey, comes in contact with the flower, its entire body is exposed. So then what happens then is the bee either dies because of a weak immune system, just because it just can't handle the toxins, or it collects the pollen, the nectar, goes back to the colony and contaminates the colony, you know, the honey and the pollen within the colony. Or the other major thing that they're finding out about the neonics is that it confuses the bees. It affects their ability to navigate back to the hive. So they get confused, can't get back to the hive, and they just die because they need the hive to survive. And if